So that was one of the weirdest episodes of Doctor Who I think I've ever seen. Hello there, I'm a nerd named Ryan. Let's talk about 73 Yards. So this, of course, is episode 4 of season 1 or series 14, and yeah, this was a pretty weird episode, and I mean that as a compliment. I kind of love how weird this new series of Doctor Who has been so far. There's been a lot of really interesting ideas, but I think this conceptually is the most fascinating episode we've had so far. I really had a great time here. Before we get into the actual story, I do want to just say I really like that this episode aired 1 week after Boom, because last week's episode, Boom, really felt like a showcase for Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor. Felt like it was very much focused all around him, and it really let Ncuti Gatwa show off his range a bit more as an actor, at least more than he has done in the previous episodes. Well, this is a Doctor Light story. The Doctor's only in this right at the start and right at the end. It is mostly a Ruby Sunday story, and that's great because that means that this is a perfect showcase for Millie Gibson, where we get to see kind of more layers to her performance and a sort of a wider range of performance from her. I thought she was phenomenal in this episode. She was absolutely brilliant in this. She was the driving force behind everything that happened, and she was so good. She really stepped up and did a great job. Now, I typically don't do kind of, scene by scene breakdowns on this channel, but we are going to discuss some major plot points within the episode because I feel like I kind of need to get over how good I think this episode was. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, I would suggest going and watching it first because it's an episode that works so brilliantly if you go into it either not knowing what to expect or expecting one thing only to then be shocked into finding out it's something else completely. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, go watch it first and then come back to me. Yeah, let's talk about it. So all the kind of trailers and stuff like that set this up to be basically a sort of gothic folk horror set in Wales. And the episode itself plays into that for a little while. About the first third or so, we get that kind of, spooky gothic horror atmosphere. We start off with the Doctor and Ruby landing in Wales. They're kind of discussing certain things. The Doctor tells Ruby about a politician in 2046 who almost causes a nuclear holocaust and almost brings about the destruction of the world. While that will come back later. While he's talking to Ruby about this politician, the Doctor steps on a fairy circle, made out of like string, very kind of Wicker Man looking thing. It's got all things in it. There are some scrolls in it. Ruby reads one of the scrolls out and it says, "Rest in peace, Mad Jack." And then we see the Doctor has vanished. He's disappeared. The TARDIS is locked. Ruby can't get back into the TARDIS. And so she starts kind of trying to hike to civilization, find, people, find there's a little village off in the distance where she, like, I'll go there and see if I can get help. And she also notices around this time a woman stood in the distance. This mysterious old lady stood quite a bit away from her. In fact, we later find out 73 yards away from her, you see, because that's the episode title. You get it. So yeah, this woman is stood, we find out, 73 yards away from her. And she tries to get closer to the woman. She tries to go further away from the woman. She runs away from the woman. But wherever she goes, the woman is always 73 yards away from her. Now, at this point in the episode, I was expecting it to be something like a ghost almost, like where Ruby's the only person who can see it. That's what I was thinking. Like she's the only person who can see this woman. Not the case. Everyone can see this woman. And in fact, anyone can interact with this woman, apart from Ruby. Ruby has to stay 73 yards away from her. Everyone else can talk to her. However, when anyone else gets close to this woman, she says something or she does something, and it causes them to basically run away and just bail out, just drop everything and run. Which is a really interesting idea. Like, we see this right at the start with a hiker played by Susan Twist. That's what Susan Twist's role is here. Also, I like that they acknowledge that Susan Twist has been playing multiple roles here, because Ruby's like, "Do I know you? Have we met before?" Like, because obviously she was the ambulance in the last episode, which Ruby would have seen. So I like that they're kind of, I like that little seed that they've planted. I like they're kind of acknowledging that, like Ruby's starting to recognize her. Anyway, this hiker played by Susan Twist goes up to the woman and is scared off by it. A man from the pub later gets scared off. And then we see kind of the dramatic effects of what happens when people try and talk to this woman, and how they just, they just not only run away, but they also like just completely abandon Ruby. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, we're still in the kind of the folk horror kind of vibe here, and she goes to this pub and she starts telling the people in the pub about, you know, the fairy circle and Mad Jack, and they're all kind of playing into like, oh my god, Mad Jack, don't say his name, don't say his name, he's dead. Yeah, but what if he's been resurrected by her standing on, you know, they're really playing into the kind of the folk horror stuff, and we hear this violent banging on a door, and you think, oh god, it's Mad Jack, they're going for the full, you know, folk horror, and then it's revealed that it's a guy. It's a delivery guy just delivering some supplies to the pub, and all the people in the pub are laughing at her like they're just having a laugh with this city girl. They're just, you know, pranking this city girl. I really liked that because it was a nice subversion. It subverted expectations. You know, they played into the trope of the folk horror story, and then went, we're not doing that. That's not the direction this is going in. And yeah, we find out soon after that that's very much not the direction it's going in. And they continue to kind of build the mystery and the intrigue with this mysterious woman. Like at one point, Ruby's mum goes and tries to talk to her, and not only does the woman scare her off, the woman basically makes Ruby's mum just completely abandon her. Like, she drives off in a taxi. Later, she locks Ruby out of the house. She basically disowns Ruby in some of the most heartbreaking scenes in the episode. Like, Millie Gibson is really great throughout this episode, but in those scenes with Ruby's mum, it's such a powerful performance from her. It's so heartbreaking to see. It's so good. And then just after that, we get a scene set like a year later, where she meets Kate Stewart of Unit. We meet Unit, and that's a really cool scene because they kind of set up Unit for. I like the scene with Kate because they kind of set up Unit for later on in the series. We know they're going to appear later in the series, most likely in the series finale. So I like that they basically give like a crash course on Unit, very similar to how in Space Babies we got like a crash course on the Doctor and sort of the show. This is very much if you're new here, this is what Unit is. So that was kind of the main point of that scene. But also, they end up abandoning Ruby when they try and, you know, arrest the mystery woman. This is also where we find out that she's always 73 yards away. Really interesting stuff there. So they're really building up this kind of mystery and this kind of... They're still going for the kind of gothic horror vibes, but it has this mystery element to it as well. We see this strange woman basically following Ruby right through until she ages up to 40. Like, we see this montage of Ruby aging through her 20s, through her 30s, up to age 40, which is really fascinating. Like, this woman's always there, and we see Ruby just slowly start to accept that this woman is just going to be there. She's just always there. That was really interesting. And then the episode just shifts gear completely and just changes genre completely. We see Ruby, she's on a date with her boyfriend. We see like multiple kind of failed relationships in this montage. Yeah, she's in the pub with her love interest, who is effectively breaking up with her, and she's zoning off. She's not paying attention. She's watching the news on TV, and there's this interview with this controversial politician, and we find out that this politician is the politician that the Doctor was talking about in that opening scene, who nearly brings about the nuclear apocalypse. And he mentioned in this interview that when he was at school, he used to be called Mad Jack. And Ruby has this revelation of, oh, this is what I'm here for, this is what this woman's here for, this is what we have to do. And at this point, the episode just changes genres completely. Like, it goes from being this kind of gothic folk horror mystery to being a political thriller, where basically Ruby volunteers to be part of this guy's political campaign in order to effectively stop him, to bring him down from the inside. And it's really, really interesting. And again, the woman's still following her, but it's cool how we see her go from being scared of this woman to accepting that she's there, to then going, I can use you to stop this politician. And it's so good. Like, the political commentary here is really good. Like, it's not subtle at all, but it's pretty well done. It is quite well done. You know, Russell T Davies has never shied away from politics in his work. But this, I think, is the most overtly political we're going to get in this series, I feel. Where, you know, it's like the human is this politician, he's the real monster here, and, you know, it's all that sort of stuff. It's quite heavy-handed, but I had no problem with it. I think it suited the story quite well, particularly when we get into this kind of political drama, political thriller in the second act of the episode. But I really like the scene in which Ruby stops him, because like basically they're on this football field. He's about to, address the nation, and it's revealed that he's going to get the nuclear codes. And it's very heavily implied. They don't state this out. Well, one character sort of speculates this. They don't state this outright, but it's very heavily implied that as soon as he gets these nuclear codes, he's going to just launch a bunch of nukes everywhere and just cause absolute chaos throughout the world, right? And Ruby has this great line, and it's brilliantly delivered by Millie Gibson, where she says to this other concerned person in the party, she goes, "I'm sorry it took so long, but I had to be sure." And she walks out onto this football field, which no one is meant to do. No, everyone's got to keep off the grass, but she goes out into the football field. She's filming the guy with her phone, and her phone sort of tells her how far away he is from her. And it says that he's at 50-something yards away. So she starts backing up. And I'm like, oh, that's clever. She gets to 73 yards away, and knowing, and she uses kind of her knowledge of this mystery woman and how she has to stay 73 yards away at all time, and also what happens when other people talk to her. And she uses that to stop the guy, because the woman appears next to the guy. I keep forgetting the politician's name. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting it. I'll find out what it is. I'll find out what it is and just put it at the bar down here. But anyway, I love that she uses the woman. The woman like appears next to the guy and scares him off to the point where he resigns as prime minister. And then we immediately find out that we've got a new prime minister who's, taken over from him, who's a much more tolerable prime minister. I really like that. I like that solution, because even though this is a Doctor-like story, the Doctor is only in one scene at the start and one scene at the end. The Doctor is absent for most of this story. I love that is a very Doctor solution. That is exactly what the Doctor would do. The Doctor would go, okay, here is the information that I have about this thing and this thing. How do I use my knowledge and my information, what I know about these things? How do I use them to work for me? How do I use this to stop this from happening? Using the information that I have. I love that. It's such a clever solution. I was so impressed with that scene. It was so well done. Really liked that. And that was a great kind of wrap up to that part of the story, to the political part of the story. And then we get another time jump, right? Then it just goes 40 years later, and I'm like, what? We jump another 40 years into the future, and we see Ruby as an old lady in hospice care towards the end of her life, and we see the old woman finally get close to Ruby. And then we get the final twist, which is that the old lady is actually Ruby. It's old Ruby is the woman that's been, stalking Ruby throughout all these years. We get a time reset with old Ruby, and she basically communicates with young Ruby, who she's watching. You just hear her say, like, don't step. And, like, young Ruby tells her, oh, watch out, don't step on that thing. And she stops him treading on the fairy circle, which, by the way, as well, I love the fact that 2 episodes in a row now, all of the stuff that has happened because the Doctor just wasn't watching where he was going and trod on something. Like, literally the episode before this, you stood on a landmine because you weren't watching where you were going. You think you would have learned, but no. But anyway, time resets. The old Ruby comes back as the old woman and stops the Doctor from treading on the thing and stops Ruby from reading the scrolls out. And everything just resets. It retcons everything that's just happened. It resets everything. I thought that was a really clever solution, a really fun little twist at the end. Really, really liked that a lot. Now, I have seen a few frustrated reactions online, particularly towards the ending, because there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. Basically, there's a lot of stuff set up in this episode that isn't answered. What's the woman saying to all these people that are, that's scaring them off to such an extent? Where did the Doctor go? He just vanished. He didn't fly away in the TARDIS, because the TARDIS, we see 80 years later, the TARDIS is still where it was, where he parked it, and moss has grown around. So he didn't leave in the TARDIS. So where did he go? How did time reset? All of these things are in the episode. None of them are really explained, right? And I can understand why that could frustrate some people. And if this was a film, if I just watched a movie and there were this many unanswered questions, I would be frustrated as well. I'd be pissed off with that too, because I'm like, no, hang on. There's stuff that doesn't make sense here. Come back and explain things. But this series has set up a lot of things like that, a lot of unanswered questions. There's the stuff with Mrs. Flood, who's in this episode again, by the way. There's the stuff with Susan Twist. There's the stuff with, the snowing. The snow comes back here as well. and we mentioned that a few times. And now there's all the stuff in this episode, all these kind of unanswered questions. Here's the thing, we are halfway through the series. We've still got a few more episodes to go. And not only that, Millie Gibson is already confirmed to be in the next series as well. So during the remainder of Ruby Sunday's time as a character, I'm pretty certain they're going to explain all of these things. They're going to wrap all of this up. So I actually like that we're leaving these little breadcrumbs. I like that we're not answering everything straight away. I like that it's kind of keeping that intrigue and that interest here. So really enjoyed that. Really, really like that. If I had one nitpick with this episode, and it's only the most minor nitpick, I kind of wish they'd done more to change up Ruby's look as we see her get older. Because she's still played by Millie Gibson up to the scenes where she's 40 and she's like, you know, getting involved in the political storyline. And listen, I'm not saying they had to do any like serious dramatic stuff with makeup. They're only aging her up to 40. 40 is not like an old is not like old or anything. So I'm not saying they need to do anything like dramatic with makeup like they did with Karen Gillan in The Girl Who Waited. Not saying they need to do that, but like literally the only thing about her appearance that changes is she gets slightly longer hair and she starts wearing glasses. Like, I feel like they could have done something a little bit more just to differentiate. This is you know, Ruby at this period of her life. This is Ruby at this period in her life. I felt like they could have done something a little bit more with that, just in terms of changing up her look. But it's not really a big issue. It's not really a big deal, and it's the most minor of nitpicks. It's not. It doesn't ruin the episode for me. I personally wish they'd have done a little bit more in changing up her look for those particular scenes. But other than that, great episode. Really, really liked it. Just a couple other things. Just one other thing I really liked as well. I really like how this episode didn't actually have an opening titles sequence. We didn't get the Doctor Who opening titles. We just got, you know, as the episode started, we just got a little title card at the bottom. It just said 73 Yards, written by Russell T Davies. I liked that because the first third of the episode was going for that kind of gothic folk horror, that kind of eerie atmosphere. And I think, you know, just jumping in and not having the big kind of dramatic opening titles, I think that really aided the creepy atmosphere they went for. So I really liked that a lot. I thought that was a nice touch. And yeah, really liked this. Millie Gibson was the standout here. The story was interesting. It went in directions I wasn't expecting it to go in. And actually, I really like how it blended the genres together, because it starts off as a sort of folk horror, then it goes into like a political drama, and then at the end we have kind of almost like fairy tale elements to it. And those are three genres that aren't really always massively connected, but they blended all three of those genres really, really well. I think Russell T Davies is to be commended for this script. I think it's one of his strongest. I think it's certainly his strongest he's done since he's come back. Maybe this and The Giggle are probably his two strongest scripts he's done so far since he's come back for Doctor Who. And that's not to say the others are bad. Like, with the exception of Space Babies, I've enjoyed pretty much all of this this run of Doctor Who, both with Ncuti and with David Tennant in the three 60th anniversary specials. But I think this was next level. This was such a great episode. And to have this follow Boom as well, which was another phenomenal standout episode. Oh, I love this. This was so good. I still think Boom is probably my favorite episode. I like that one slightly more than this, but this is an episode that kind of demands a rewatch, and I'm going to be rewatching this plenty of times in the future. I can see it. This is for me, this is going to, I think this and Boom are both going to end up being just classics of this era of Doctor Who. So yeah, really loved it. 73 Yards. I love the experimental direction this series is going in, and I hope that continues. I hope they continue with that kind of more weird storytelling. I really, really hope that carries on for the rest of the series. Really looking forward to seeing what they do next week with Dot and Bubble. But let me know what you thought of 73 Yards. Any thoughts you had on this episode, drop them down in the comments. Should be an interesting episode to discuss, certainly. Thanks for stopping by. That's it from me, and that's generally all I have to say on this episode. Yeah, see you when I see you. Bye.